Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Film Like a Girl. I'm your host, Catherine Mora, aka Miss Catherine Mora, and today I'm joined by none other than Sydney Abeyta. Sydney, thank you so much for joining the podcast this month. So excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for involving me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for anybody who this is your first time listening to the podcast or watching the podcast, Film Like a Girl, every month I interview a lovely lady who works in the film industry, from film directors to actresses to producers to festival directors to people who work in marketing, like Sydney. So, Sydney, if you want to give us a little bit of backstory about who you are, what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Arizona. I had big city dreams, so I moved to New York in 2019. And I've worked with the company that I'm with now for going on 6 years, which is like kind of really crazy to think about. And even the fact that I've been in New York for that long. The company that I work for is called Allied Global Marketing. We have a lot of different departments. I work on our field marketing team, which we like to call that kind of like the boots on the ground. We're the front lines. And then we
Yeah.
have a sports marketing department. We have a creative department. They work on more of like the physical assets, mailers, things like that. Digital creative. They do a lot of the digital advertising, billboards and whatnot. But then we have our digital team, and they are the ones that when you feel like your phone is like listening a little bit too closely to you and the ads are like super tailored, they're the ones that are tackling that, and they're very good at what they do. And there's also entertainment research marketing. They are exactly what they sound like. They do research, so they'll hold focus groups around films that will kind of help dictate how a film looks in its final form. So what they do is very interesting. So sometimes there's alternate endings to a lot of the films that you've seen. Probably a lot of your favorite films have filmed, alternate scenes. And so they'll put that in
Yeah.
front of a focus group, and that group will be like, "Oh, this ending resonated more with us." And so then that will be the one that you will see in its final form in theaters. And then what I do is I am kind of a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. All of us on the team are. We wear many different hats. We are a little bit of an extension of the in-house team. So for people that are not familiar with agency versus in-house basically means you work directly for a company. So if I worked for Disney, I would be in-house, but I work for an agency, and the movie studios are our clients. So I will oversee a certain amount of clients. My coworkers will oversee other clients. Sometimes I have no idea what's happening with other film studios like Searchlight and Focus. Sometimes they'll tell me about a campaign that they worked on. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. I had no idea. I myself oversee Paramount, GM, our multicultural initiatives, and I assist on the Apple TV Plus Awards account. And then I'll tackle a few one-offs here and there, just kind of where they need me. We will get what are called directives from the studio, kind of telling us like a loose guideline of how they would like things to look. These are the demographics we're trying to reach. We would like to see a diner night initiative, like something, that's like very specific tie-in they want every market to be aligned on. But the
Yeah.
fun part of what we do is we kind of get to have a little bit of creativity with all of that. We take those guidelines, those directives, and we run with them. We'll create an entire proposal for the client. And that's like, we'll flesh out all the budgets. We propose it to them. They look at it. They say, great, these ideas are approved. These ideas we're going to pass on for now. We take those approved ideas, we run with them. And it's a really fun time. We do retail partnerships, sports partnerships, content creator partnerships, a lot of different partnerships. And I work very locally on the New York level. So I have colleagues that work in other major cities that will only focus on their market. So I very much am honed into New York. This is my playground. This is what I know. And yeah, that's kind of the day to day. And probably the more glamorous part of what we do is we get to assist at junkets and red carpets, which is always a really fun time. And I really enjoy the awards work. That for me is very tangible. Yes, this film has been nominated, like a goalpost that is very clear to me, and it's just really
Yeah.
fun working on that. But I've been going on and on. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love it. Please continue going on and on whenever whenever you want. No, but wow, I actually didn't realize just how extensive and intensive, I guess, Allied was. Because I know you mentioned you had a few different clients, but I guess my first question is about how many projects, I guess, or activations, events, things like that. Like, how many are you typically working on at a time?
Yeah, for any single film, usually like at least 3 to 4 major grassroots activations at a time. And then sometimes, like, project-wise, we can be working on multiple film titles at one time. So it can kind of overlap quite a bit, especially right after the pandemic when things started opening back up and movie studios had been holding on to projects and they started
Yeah.
releasing those in 2021, 2022. That was a whirlwind. It was so much fun, but I'm glad that it's kind of slowed down and I'm pacing to, work on like a couple of projects at a time and really get to spend my time on a campaign and flesh it out and properly be present with it. So I'm really enjoying this time.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I honestly can imagine like just how much more peaceful it must be now. So like how long would you say you have like from the point one of the clients like gives you like the directive or like gives you the heads up like, hey, this is coming up to like the actual activation? What's more or less the timeline there?
So a fun part about working in agency life is kind of getting to experience all these different clients and they all have different expectations and different personalities per se. So, like, let's take, for example, Disney usually works a little bit further out in advance than other movie studios do. Typically, we'll get at least a month and a half from release date to really, make these big grassroots activations happen. For the most part, we'll try to work ahead of schedule if we can. If we're not, too busy working on other projects in real time, we always try to plan ahead a little bit by at least a couple of months.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Cause you knowing what clients, like what studios are your clients, you can kind of look at the calendar and see what films they have coming up, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, and
Nice.
then I find myself just out and about in the city being like, "This is a nautical themed restaurant. We have SpongeBob coming up at the end of the year," and I'll be, like, taking mental note about things that are going on in the city that might be applicable to a future title.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see how, because you were saying before, like, you had big dreams of moving to the city. So it's really fun and exciting to see how not only you work in the city, but like just living day to day in New York City all ties in together to what you do.
Yeah, we definitely like to consider ourselves experts in the New York market for sure.
I know you say you're like very focused in on New York and like what's happening here. Are you ever like asked or required to travel for anything at all? Are you mostly just focused
Mostly
totally in New
just
York?
New York. Every once in
Okay.
a while, we'll get, an ask to cover something in New Jersey, so that kinda falls under our jurisdiction. We split that between ourselves and our Philadelphia office. A few things going on in Connecticut, but that's more of like a regional thing. We don't really, like, travel to anywhere else like LA. But we do have some very senior level allied global marketing employees who do travel for most of the red carpets just because they're very experienced. They're very good at what they do. So when we have a big event going on, they'll usually call in the big guns, which is fun to see my colleagues in person for those events.
So I guess to kind of backtrack a little bit, what did you when you were picturing, when little younger Sydney was, like, imagining herself in New York City, did you know it was gonna be, like, marketing or film industry related, or, like, how did that part come to be?
Oh my gosh. I've kind of learned to not even look past like a week from now because
Mhm.
things are just so constantly always changing. People ask me if 5-year plans, 10-year plans, and I have really truly nothing concrete. And I really love it that way. It leaves me a lot of space to, change things up whenever I want. And I don't feel tied to any specific image of myself. But when I was younger, I had very big dreams of becoming an actress singer. That was like what I wanted to do. I had a very big personality. And then as I got older, I kind of wanted to follow in my dad's footsteps. He did electrical engineering and then he went on to law school and he became an intellectual property attorney. And my brother did the same thing. But it turns out you have to have skills in math to be able to take that route. And I found out very quickly that I was counting on my fingers and I could not keep up with that level of mathematics. I did not inherit that gene from my father. And then I pivoted over to journalism, actually. I went to the Arizona State University School of Journalism and Mass Communication, and that is what my bachelor degree is. But I took an emphasis in PR. And when I originally started, I kind of thought that I would be a broadcast journalist. And then also kind of quickly realized that I didn't love being in front of the camera. So I wanted to do something that was a little bit more behind the scenes. I did a little bit of print journalism, found that there wasn't as much creativity there as I would have liked. And then someone asked me, "Hey, have you ever looked into public relations?" And I was like, "No, I had literally no clue what PR was at the time." I went to a few club meetings and I was like, "Oh, yeah, this is it." And PR is really cool. Anything really in communications is really cool because everyone needs PR marketing. Like, let's say you are a big sports fan, like you could probably go do marketing for your favorite sports team, or you're really into space, like you could do marketing for NASA. Like the possibilities are limitless because there's always something out there. So I took on an internship with a company called Finger Paint Marketing, and they had a film department. I actually wasn't an intern for their film department. They had dedicated interns, but I was very curious at the time. There were a lot of different departments, and so I, kind of went over there and I was like, "Do you guys have any projects that, you're willing to part with? I would love to participate." And so I did a few things with them and I was like, "Okay, yeah, this seems like something that I could really get into." I had grown up watching a lot of film. My dad was a big film buff. We had a built-in movie theater at home, so like most weekends we were watching movies, and I used to joke by the time I turned 18, I had seen more movies than most people had seen in their lifetimes. I just was like constantly consuming. I recently went on Letterboxd and tried to track everything, and I was like in the 1200s or something, and I gave up.
Oh my God.
But I genuinely, I love film. It's such a connecting piece between past, present, future communities. Like you get to step into someone else's shoes for a little bit. It increases empathy. Like there's just so much around it that it makes it such a beautiful medium. But yeah, so I took on the internship, was interested in film, graduated, took a gap year, and I backpacked Europe for about a month and a half.
Fun.
Oh yeah, I had so much fun. I didn't realize how much fun I was having at the time, and I always say how much I would love to redo that time just to have the fun all over again. But yes, I came back and I kind of knew that I love Arizona with my entire heart, but I knew that I wanted to branch out and live somewhere else. And I came down to, it was between San Diego, my brother lived there at the time, my baby niece was there, so there was a strong pull, Seattle and New York. And I took a leap of faith. I moved to New York. I did not have a job lined up, but I had a friend who worked at Allied Global Marketing. She worked in the business development department. And I asked her, "Hey, if anything ever opens up, I'm super interested." A few months later down the line, she hit me up and was like, "Hey, there's this position that's open. It's super entry level. It's basically front desk. You would be a PR assistant, but it was, super foot in the door. I don't even know if you'd be interested." And I was like, "Yes, get me in there." I
Yeah.
like, at least for the interview. So I interviewed, I got the position, had a lot of fun because I really got to know all of the different departments and became very familiar with what Allied Global Marketing does. And that was what kind of helped steer me toward the field team that I'm on now. I tried out a lot of different teams when I was that PR assistant role. Like I even helped out on the HR team. I helped out on the IT team for a little bit. I was like patching servers over the pandemic. Very much, again, like a Swiss Army knife. I wear so many hats. And eventually ended up on the field marketing team in 2021 when things were really starting to open back up after the pandemic, and started out as an account coordinator. So, for those who don't know, the kind of inner workings of agency life, you have entry level is going to be your account coordinator, and then you have a junior account executive, an account executive, senior account executive, and then it turns more into like the director level. And sometimes titles are different, depending on if you're looking in-house or some titles can be a little bit interchangeable. Like an account coordinator in-house is probably more of like a senior level position than it would be agency level. So I started out account coordinator in 2021 and then slowly transitioned to junior, and now I'm an account executive, which basically means like I am the point person for a client. I handle campaigns from the ground up. I see it through all the way from initial brainstorming all the way to client reporting at the end to say, "Hey, this is how we spent your money, and this is this beautiful campaign that we're so proud of. Please look at it." Essentially, probably my favorite campaign that I have ever worked on, and it doesn't quite fall under the usual campaign, because it's under the awards team, was Killers of the Flower Moon. So I worked really hard on that Oscars campaign, and it got, I think, 13 nominations. I might be misremembering that now, but it was nominated for Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Picture, like
Mhm.
Best Director. The list just like went on and on and on. So that one I was really proud of, and getting to work closely with Martin Scorsese's team, getting to work closely with the TV team is just something that's so special, and I'll always remember and carry that with me for the rest of my life. Getting
Yeah.
to contribute to something that, had such real tangible impact.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see how that would be more like because you can like you actually see the results and like everybody sees the results. It's not just necessarily like analytics behind the scenes. Like it's like, no, look at all this stuff that got nominated. Look.
Yeah. So that one was definitely probably my favorite campaign that I've ever worked on, and that was already so long ago, which is so crazy to think about. It feels like yesterday.
So I don't know if you're allowed to tell us this. Do you know if you're doing any more like award campaigns or you have any more that you know that might be coming up?
Yeah, definitely. Currently, we're working on Emmys awards.
Nice.
So the studio, which is Seth Rogen's project, is
Hmm.
a big one. I have actually a screening that's happening this Sunday for Your Friends and Neighbors, which is John Hamm, Olivia Munn. Those award screenings will invite a lot of the voting members. So it's important to provide opportunities for voting members to see whatever projects it is that they're going to be voting on. Not everyone has every single streaming service. So, how are they supposed to vote on something that they don't have access to? So, it's our job to make sure that they are provided that opportunity to see the great project it is so that they can make a very informed decision when they're casting votes,
So that brings up something very interesting. So recently, the Academy was like, if you want to vote on something, you have to watch all of the movies.
which I love.
How does, I mean, no, I was shocked when I realized that wasn't a rule previously. So how does that impact what you guys do? Like, are you probably going to have to do more screenings? Like, how does that work?
That I'm not entirely sure on, around the Oscars will provide multiple opportunities for screenings. And actually, for Killers of the Flower Moon, we did like, I want to say, two screenings every Sunday for like at least a month. So there were definitely ample opportunities for people to come out and see that film in particular. So I think Apple TV did a really great job of providing those opportunities right off the bat. Maybe in future we'll see more attendance at those events, since folks who are wanting to vote will have needed to see these projects. So that's
Hmm.
the hope, that we'll see more faces.
Yeah, yeah. But you would think that's been like absolutely boggling my mind for the last however many days it's been since they announced that. It's like, what do you mean you guys didn't have to watch all the movies before?
Yeah. Yep. And I think Kirsten Dunst made a comment about how she makes a point to watch all the films to make sure that she's, an informed voter. And when she said that, what people were like, wait, what? And I think that was what kind of started the conversation around like, do other people not watch all of the
Yeah.
films that they're voting on? So I definitely am in support of that, because how are you supposed to choose who is meant to receive the award for the work if you haven't yourself seen the work?
I feel like that's why, at least in recent years, there's been such a disconnect between like what ordinary film buff people, like people who go see all these movies, what they would choose as like the winners versus like what the Academy has chosen as the winners.
Mhm.
Just interesting,
Yeah.
interesting little differences and tidbits that are coming out. So another question I have, because that for the awards, it's like they call that like a for your consideration event, right? So how are for those of us who like are not in that circle, how is that different from your typical influencer pre-release screening?
Yeah, definitely. So the 4-year consideration screenings are specifically set for voting members. So a lot of that is like the Screen Actors Guild, Production Guild, like there's a lot of guilds that are involved. So those screenings are geared very much toward those organizations versus the advanced screenings that you were referencing, where we do a lot of like the influencer invites. those are very much community based. And I have a lot of fun with those because we get to look at a project and kind of deep dive into who we personally feel like has a vested interest in whatever project it is. Because the audience is always going to be different depending on what project. There's going to be overlap as there is with everything. But for the most part, like the audience for Barbie isn't going to be the same audience for Warfare. The messaging is different. The groups that you reach out to are going to be different. So we become mini experts in whatever it is that we're working on. You're working on a scary movie. You find all of the horror groups that are in New York City. You get to deep dive. You get to find the influencers who are really invested in horror films and invite them to see the film because you, one, you want to create that um, relationship with the content creator. And two, you know that they already have that very organic following of people who are also interested in what it is that they're posting about, whatever, niche topic it is that they are very honed in on and very in tune with.
So it sounds like research is a huge part of what you do and like research into various different things.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And it's kind of amazing because there's a group for almost anything and there's an influencer for almost anything. Like, let's say we were working on the movie A Working Man with Jason Statham recently, and I was like, are there blue collar influencers? And we did end up finding quite a few, and that was so fun to get them involved. I invited a girl, she was a longshoreman working in New Jersey, so she got to come join us for some events, and it's just such a fun thing to be able to create those relationships. And that's why I really personally enjoy the content creator work, getting to, me and you get
Yeah.
to have this relationship. We follow each other on Instagram. We're very
Mhm.
friendly, and I very much value that in what I do.
Yes. No, I do too. I do too. Like, I think this is why you're so good at what you do because you can tell that like you genuinely care. You took such good care of my mom and I on the first carpet and every other event. Like you always are happy to see me. You're happy to see the other influencers. Like you can just tell that you're like you care so deeply, not just about the work, but about like the people that you're involving in it. So, my hat, I'm not wearing a hat, but my hat's off to you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I do.
absolutely.
I'm glad that that comes across. I do genuinely very much care. And I remember every single influencer that I walk on a carpet. I can like so vividly remember that carpet Amsterdam. That was a really cool carpet.
It
And that
was.
was a very fun first experience for you for sure.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I just remember there and then all of a sudden Margot Robbie, woof. I was like, oh, hi, Margot.
Yes. Yeah. That was such a star-studded one. I look back fondly on that red carpet for sure.
What are some of your other favorite carpets that you've done?
I don't know why the first one that's coming to mind for me is the Venom carpet, but I'm trying to remember exactly what about it stood out to me. I think they had just a lot of things going on. Like there was a bus that would drive by with the, Venom character on it
Hmm.
while people were waiting outside. They had fan pens where Tom Hardy was able to come around and greet fans, which is always a really cool experience. And speaking of that, what a fan pen is, it's kind of like a viewing gallery. Essentially, I mean, I think you probably know what this is,
Yeah.
Catherine, but just in case viewers don't know,
Yes.
you're essentially like right on the carpet. There's maybe a barrier between you, and the cast gets to come down and interact with fans before they go and take their photos on the carpet, before they do their interviews. And Tom Cruise had a fan pen at the last Mission Impossible premiere, and there's going to be another one at this upcoming Mission Impossible premiere. And he does a really great job of really spending time with folks, which I found just very admirable. He really genuinely sees someone, talks with them for an extended amount of time instead of it just being like a very quick hi bye. So I definitely remember the Mission Impossible premiere for that reason. The Dune carpet was very cool.
Yes.
They took over the Lincoln Plaza. So it was like a square shaped red
Yeah.
carpet instead of like the usual typical, like just straight line carpet.
Hmm.
So it's cool to see something a little bit different. There's so many carpets, and I'm like blanking on all of them. Well, one thing I do like is, we call them red carpets, But
Mhm.
something that studios have been doing more recently is even the carpet kind of changes color based on whatever the film is. So let's say for Paramount's movie If, purple was a very prominent color throughout the film, and so the whole carpet was purple. I found that very fun. The carpet that you went to, Amsterdam, I don't know if you remember
It's
that carpet.
it's green.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
green and it had
Like
like sunbursts in it.
yeah, like gold designs in it, yeah.
So I find that very cool that they're getting creative even with the carpet itself. Wait, so what's your favorite carpet then? Because there's definitely carpets that I either am not available for or for some reason sometimes in-house teams are larger and they're able to tackle more in the market. So they maybe don't quite need as much additional help from agencies like myself.
I think my so I know my favorite carpet this wasn't necessarily my favorite carpet, it was my favorite, like, setup and
Mhm.
location was for Black Adam, that they essentially
Oh,
took over a portion of Times Square,
yes.
which was, like, really, really cool. It was a little chaotic in that we had to first gather at a hotel, like, 2 blocks away, and then they walked us all over, and then we were, like, in this weird holding pattern, but the actual, like, setup that they had of the carpet was really cool. They had like almost they were right next to I like the stairs, those like red stairs in Times Square.
Yes. Uh-huh. I know.
They were like set up right next to there, so that was like full of people like trying to like look over the barrier and everything. So in terms of location, like that was really iconic. But my
Yeah,
favorite, go ahead.
I sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I was in the Bahamas during that time, and so I my coworkers were all at that screening, and I remember first even hearing about the idea of doing a Times Square takeover, and I think they rented out, like, every single movie theater that was inside AMC Empire, which,
Hmm.
again, something that people who might not work in the film industry won't know, that the number that is at the end of a movie theater, for example, AMC Lincoln 13, that means that there's 13 auditoriums in that building. So AMC Empire 25
Yeah.
is kind of crazy to think about when you take into account that they rented out every single house in that theater and they filled the entire building, 25 auditoriums. So that was a
Yes.
huge red carpet, and that's very cool that you got to participate in that.
It was like and the thing was too that I guess Dwayne Johnson was popping into every single theater before they started watching the film.
Yeah.
So we were actually supposed to start, I think, at like 7 o'clock, but we didn't start until 8 because we were like so far down the line and he was still going to every single theater to like welcome everybody. So yeah, it was packed. That
Yeah.
building was like insane.
I can imagine that that was definitely very chaotic. And premieres, these events, they never start on time. I always tell people, I'm like, I'm inviting you to this premiere, but it says 7, but that's very loosely 7.
Yes. Um yeah, no, I think my favorite premiere of all time was probably the Daredevil Born Again premiere that I did. I it was Disney was doing it in-house. Even like the event itself, I think was inside like a Disney building. And yeah, I mean, it was small, definitely nowhere near as impressive as Times Square, but like you had like the carpet and then you had like the press junket line and then just this whole area that like people were like drinking and mingling and chatting and you had some of the talent just like walking around and talking to people and everybody's just having a good time. So that was definitely probably my favorite.
Nice. Yeah, sometimes those more intimate receptions and events are even more memorable than like the really big stunted out ones. But I mean, also the big stunted out ones are so very cool. It just depends.
Memorable in different ways.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh man. But I mean, also like, cause because we're talking a lot about premieres, like those are very like high point, high moments, in like in your job. But I guess what are some of like the more like toned down, like more like typical day to day things
Yeah.
that you do?
I feel like the Smile 2 campaign was a fun one. I'm gonna go back to that one. So Smile 2 is a Paramount film. So we had a radio partnership. So like my day to day was pretty much just emailing back and forth with a radio contact and providing them with copy that their radio DJ will read online. hey, this is Garrett. Smile 2 is going to be out in theaters on October, that whole spiel. Usually when you hear that, one of us has provided that copy either directly from the studio or we've written it ourselves, which is really fun to then hear it on the radio. We did a content creator event at Lip Lab, which is like a custom lipstick making class so that they could make their perfect smile, which was a lot of fun. I got to be on site for that one. We had a tastemaker screening, which is really nice. We had that at the Bryant Park Hotel screening room. Very elevated, very nice. And then our advanced screening, where we got to, as I mentioned earlier, hone in on those communities that we felt would have a vested interest. So, there's groups like Fears Mag or Horror Chick Flicks. And so we'll reach out to them and we'll let them know that we have this screening coming up. We'd love to invite their members. And then they come out and the idea behind the advanced screenings is that we get an organic conversation started. Let's take, for example, you go to see, it's not a film, right? Daredevil. It's a
That was a
series.
show. It was a
Show.
series,
Yeah.
yeah.
But so you got to go probably screen like the first one or two episodes. And then the idea then is that you would take that experience and provide a very genuine review of what you've seen. You'll go to your friends and family and be like, hey, I just saw the first episode. It was so cool. You should go check it out. And so then when it does come out in theaters or on streaming, that conversation has already been started. Your friends and family will be like, oh, Catherine mentioned this. Let's give it a go. And it gets that momentum started before it actually even becomes available. So I really like it in that aspect that it is very much a genuine and organic way to spread the word. And that is what we call word of mouth marketing. Um, yeah, so let me go back. So we had that advanced screening. Oh, we had a retail partnership with Juice. So we got to create a custom juice that was like a blood red, and the label on it had the movie, we call it title treatment, which basically just means it's the logo of
Okay.
the film. Like it literally will just say like Smile 2.
Hmm.
That was a really cool one for me. I got to actually go and pick that juice up in store and try it myself. It was very delicious. I highly recommend Own Juice if you ever find yourself in the city. And we'll provide what we call promo items, which you probably have received like goodie bags probably in the past if
Yeah.
you've attended events and all that. It's basically an item that we feel ties into the film somehow. So again, going back to Smile 2, the main character is a pop star singer. So one of the promo items was a clear concert bag. That's something that people can actually use in their day to day life.
Yeah.
It's, actually useful, and it also reminds them of the film, and it also, catches other people's attention when they're out in public with whatever the item is. So it serves threefold.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of like the day to day of hitting those partnerships and getting that organic conversation started.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like you're saying you were looking for something that allowed you to be creative. It's definitely a lot of creativity that
Mhm.
goes into all of that. Cause not just like researching, but like, groups that you can reach out to and like it's also just being immersed. Cause my day job, social media marketing, you have to really not just understand what it is you're promoting. You have to understand like even the broadest like person who might be interested in it, not necessarily just like the niche people, but like also like you're saying, like, okay, what events, what like activities can like tie into something, like what items can tie back to something in a way that makes sense. Yeah, it's a lot of thought and creativity that has to go into that.
It's a very creative role, and I do love being able to exercise that creativity, and every single day is different. Sometimes we'll get asks for something that, I've never done before. It does follow like a formula. Like we know when we get a campaign that we need to do radio, retail, influencer, word of mouth groups, like we know that, but like the actual like niche of it all, when we have to do that research and deep dive, it's just always different. Yeah, having to become a mini expert in literally whatever film it is that we're working on.
So would you say for somebody who's like interested in doing film marketing, film PR, or I guess PR and marketing in general, that like adaptability is probably the most important trait that you need to have, or
Very much adaptability and a can-do attitude because you'll get really fun and crazy requests come across your desk and part of the fun is being able to like figure it out and get whatever it is that's being asked of you done. And the pride that comes with that at the end of the day of knowing you've accomplished something is so gratifying without giving like too many details of any requests that I've been given. But it's it's definitely something that you have to just be able to be like, okay, I can do it. Even if in the moment you're like, I have no idea how I'm gonna do that, but you're like, I'm on it. And you figure it out. I figure it out every single time.
yeah, you have to.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, 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 got it. And then I'm to my coworkers, I'm like, we we're gonna figure it out.
And then when it's done and you did it, it must feel so much like more satisfying.
Yeah. It's a very very fun job. Every single day is different. Every single day is slightly the same. I don't know how else to explain it. It's like it's
Yeah.
different, but it's familiar at the same time.
Okay. Okay. So I guess before we wrap it up, one last question. What, like, if you could give any piece of advice to somebody who either wants to break into the industry, whether it's through PR and marketing, or it's just like the industry in general, like what would you tell that person?
I would say have practical experience. So, for example, my company does a lot of freelance work. So, having that experience on the front end definitely helps when you're trying to then transition into, you know, actually working for a company and understanding how things work on the back end and definitely leveraging your network. I know people say all the time, like network, network, network. That was how I got my internship that, sparked my initial interest in working in film marketing. As I mentioned earlier, I knew someone who actually worked at the company that I work at now. So definitely leveraging that network and not being afraid to take that foot in the door position. If I had been like, "Oh, it's a front desk, whatever," and not been kind of willing to pick myself up by the bootstraps and work my way up, I wouldn't be where I am now today.
Couldn't say it any better. Well, Sydney, thank you so, so much again for joining us on this episode of Film Like a Girl. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Yes, no, I'm glad you had fun. I'm glad you enjoyed it. To the listeners and viewers, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in the next episode next month. Bye.